everyone back in the saddle, if you will. So we're excited for a big show today. We do have a special guest that's going to be joining us at 5:35 today, and that's Adam Rittenberg. If you ever get on ESPN.com, he writes a lot of college football articles. We're going to have him as a guest at 5:35. So looking forward to that. So big things going on in the world of sports. College World Series is in full force. There was a no-hitter today.
A no-hitter with 19 Ks. Arkansas only the third in College World Series history.
And that was an elimination game too. So Murray State Cinderella story is over for them. But what a ride and what a journey for that team.
Yeah, I know. And it's kind of hard because you want. Once Murray State made it to Omaha, that's kind of them, and Coastal have kind of been the teams I've been cheering for. But then we talked about it a few weeks ago, your heart goes out for Arkansas fans too, because they've always had such a great program and just haven't been able to get there. So a lot of great opportunities for some teams out there this week to go finally take one home.
Yeah, so they've been the bridesmaid but never the bride, and like I've said, I'd like Arkansas. If there's going to be an SEC team to win it, I would prefer Arkansas over LSU because LSU's won it so many times. I like to see new blood. I like to see guys and programs get that trophy that's eluded them for all these for decades there in Fayetteville. So good for Arkansas. Listen. It's all about pitching at this point. You get that good, solid pitching, it doesn't matter what your opponent's been doing offensively. If you're on, you'll make even the best hitters look like idiots out there.
For sure. And, I've been gone for 2 weeks, but can we just talk about how, none of our three teams, I don't even know that they made it out of
We discussed this. We did terrible.
I had Clemson.
I know.
I had Clemson.
I had Vanderbilt.
I had Georgia. None of us made – I had Texas. None of us made
My
it.
number 2 team, Florida State, didn't make it.
Yeah. It was a
and they were all hosting regionals.
I know.
And they all got beat.
rough. But, it shows you – it just shows you how competitive baseball is at the college level, and when teams go on burners and teams are hot and they stay hot or can get hot at the right time. You look at Murray State, that stadium, their stadium looks. Lee's looks just as nice, if not nicer.
Yeah, we talked about that last week while I was here anyway, before I got all sick and everything. But really, I think Lee Stadium, Larry Carpenter Stadium, is a better facility.
Yeah,
it's nicer.
It doesn't sit as many people, but it's definitely nicer.
What does the Larry Carpenter Stadium sit?
I think 350.
I was thinking it was more than that, but
I'll check it.
Okay,
I'll look it up. But
and so 800 at Murray State, I think, is the number. So. Really, it's not a bad comp, honestly, between the two. But, you hear the story about the head coach. He's the one that mows the grass and everything. It's just a feel-good story for a team that puts in all the work and does the little things like that to be able to play on this stage. What a big deal for them to make it that far.
What was so cool about this run they've made and going all the way to Omaha is that they're getting fielders from a lot of Division I guys now, considering Murray State as a transfer destination. So this could be one of those program-defining moments that, hey, you know what? We may become a real serious baseball program, and if they do, you would think they would sink more money into it for the facilities. But obviously the NIL may be a thing that they'll have to navigate. But, man, it's kind of cool to see a program come up literally from nowhere, and then here they are on the biggest stage.
Well, not just for them, but they potentially could have opened the door for a lot of other mid-majors with kids saying, listen, I can go sit on the bench at an ACC school or an SEC school until my junior, maybe senior year, or I can go to a place like this and play early. I think in regards, we know college football this way has changed because of the portal. You might see some sophomores, some juniors say, I'm going to go give Murray State a try. I'm going to go give some schools like Murray State a try, to your point, Jim, and I think that's good for the game. That's one of the good things about the portal, as much as I think there are so many negatives about it.
Well, the thing that's going on in the NCAA, they've increased the number of baseball scholarships, but they've reduced the roster size. So guys that are, the big bench full of 43 guys is going to be down to a lot less than that, even though more guys will be on full scholarship. But the roster itself is going to be less, so guys will have no choice but to have to leave some of these programs and play at another school. But listen, playing time is the key to anyone that's a competitive athlete. They want to play. They do not want to ride the pine or ride the bench, whatever. So I could see the situations where some of these smaller schools may rise up, which I think is great. I do.
Yeah. Hey, while we're on the topic, did y'all see the transfer portal hit that Tennessee had in baseball?
No, I did not.
Dylan Lloyd, their like top pitching prospect entered the portal today.
Wow.
Yeah, so he, if I believe I saw this correctly, 3.22 career ERA, 73 Ks. He's not draft eligible, but that I was kind of shocked by that just because I'm pretty sure he led them in appearances this year.
Interesting.
So he's
Probably
4-0 on the year. Yeah, honestly. Yeah.
End up at Wake Forest, right?
So I mean, but in today's game, like people are money chasing, and so he very well could end up back with the Vols. He could love and it could just be a money thing.
That's true.
We looked at Boo Carter. He did it in the offseason with UT. Nico tried it. So I would. In the famous words of Chipper Jones, if you want to be here, you need to make your intentions known. And
that's it.
And just say it and let the boosters pay up a little bit. But if not, he could be searching for a new home here soon.
Interesting.
Tennessee baseball has the money, and who knows? That's the thing with the portal. There are good things about it. When it comes to the money, I think it's a negative when kids are doing it to try to play free agency while they're in college. I don't like that. That's not fun to me. That as a fan, as someone that comes on here to talk sports, that's not enjoyable for me to talk about. But I do think maybe he's not a good fit for that locker room. I don't know this kid. I've not heard anything, but maybe there's more to it to where Coach Vitello said, hey, you need to enter the transfer portal. You need to get out of here. And who knows? Maybe it's one of those things that's going to be good for UT and it's going to be good for another program and good for that kid to get a fresh start.
Well, Tennessee's going to get some really good talented kids through the portal. So they're not going to be void.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, maybe it's almost a trade-off. I don't know.
Yeah, and really something that you got to give the Vols props for is they also, a lot, like I can say this, Georgia has been big in the portal the past couple of years. Even like they entered the offseason very early this year and they started going out and getting guys from the portal immediately. The Vols do a great job recruiting high school recruits. Some of the top players in the nation, that's something that Vitello is really, really good at. And, so maybe there's a dude out there that they're recruiting or know that's coming on campus. And I know he had, I think I saw it was like 34 innings this year. So I don't know. Who knows? You can't speak on intentions about what a kid's doing. In this point in time, with kids that this is life-changing money for them.
Oh, absolutely.
If I put myself in that shoes, it'd be hard to say that I wouldn't be going to the portal trying to get some more money from either the Vols or from somebody else.
I saw a college football, and it's changing from baseball to football. I saw a college football analyst make this comment. He goes, if he was, and he said this, now I disagree because I have something about, I think loyalty does play a part. He says if he was the best player in college football as a freshman, the best freshman, he goes, I'd enter the portal. He goes, because I want to see who's going to pay what. He goes, it could be the team he's currently with will ante up and keep him. He goes, but I'd enter the portal my freshman year, at my junior year, or sophomore year, and junior year. But I don't like that because I think there's something to be said about continuity and loyalty. But apparently a lot of the people don't believe in that.
Listen, that's lost on this generation.
It really
I hate to say it, I really do. There's some kids out there that it still means something to them. There's kids that grow up watching teams just like we watched our teams that say, hey, that's where I want to play when I get older. And they don't care what the dollar signs are. If they're good enough and that team comes calling, that's where they're going. I'm not saying those guys don't exist anymore, but as a whole, it's turned into a business. If we like it or not, it is a business now, and it's disappointing to a lot of old school fans like ourselves who, I made this comment last week. I was listening to the Paul Feinbaum show, and one of the callers said, I feel like I'm more disconnected with my team and my school than I've ever been because...
And he was an Alabama guy.
Yes, he said, because I feel like the guys that are wearing our uniform don't care about our brand anymore. They're just worried about the paycheck. That really set with me, hearing him say that, and I started thinking about it. That's why I do have a lot of respect in the teams like Clemson and Dabo Swinney who try to still do things as wholesome as they can, while at the same time you've got to adapt or you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
In this day and age, you have to adapt to an extent. That's why I'm not big on the Indianas, the people that just flip their team and flip their coaching staff for the sake of a year or two. And who knows, maybe he works out for 5-10 years. Maybe it's a great story and Indiana becomes a consistent player in the Big Ten in college football. I don't know. But it's disheartening to me to see schools, not just in football, in wrestling, in baseball, and all these sports that I follow at the NCAA level, to see teams basically just selling out for success. It's hard. And I'm an Iowa wrestling fan. I love Iowa wrestling. That's a huge brand. Them and Penn State are, the top tier, the cream of the crop. And Iowa wrestling's doing it. They're plucking kids from all over the country for wins, and it's fun to win. I get it, but you don't feel like those kids are putting that Iowa wrestling singlet on anymore because they love Dan Gable when they were growing up or because they love the brands. It's affecting every single sport, and it's very disheartening.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. Like you said, it's changed how I view college football in the sense of, like, recruiting was one of my favorite things to follow. National Signing Day was like a holiday for me.
Same
I
here.
hope Dr. Lindbergh's not listening, but like on my computer at work, I would have that just sitting while I was teaching because I wanted to know
What are you talking about? I used to take the day off. And
who was committing to the Dogs and like all that stuff. That was big to me.
It doesn't
'cause that
mean
was
anything
the
anymore.
The next generation of guys that were going to lead my team. I don't know that they're going to be there. I have no like connection anymore. And again, I know that sounds weird. Like I'm waiting for some 18-year-old to put on a hat and say I'm going to be a dog.
if you were to ask a 17 or 18-year-old kid that's a 3, 4, or 5-star what the word commit meant, and for them to write a definition, they probably couldn't do it. They don't know what commit means because they've seen all these people commit and then go somewhere else. That's what it means. I'm going to go somewhere other than what I'm saying.
Yeah.
These days, what I hear are the visits that the coaches make to the homes. The parents are going, how much can my kid make? How much you going to pay my kid? And usually that would drive me nuts as a coach,
As a recruiter.
But it's the reality of what they're doing these days.
Yeah.
And that's why we see the portal is just full of kids. Because there's a better deal out there, hopefully for them, they think. The grass is always greener, they say. Not always, though.
That's one reason I liked Riley Leonard so much this past year. Not only did he take my team to a national title and was he successful? Absolutely. But the thing that I liked about him was he entered the portal with a no contact because he knew what he wanted to do. And he knew the expectations. And, yeah, Notre Dame's a brand that they can give money. Like, I understand that. But he entered not wanting to be trumped by Texas or USC or Oregon or anywhere that might have needed a quarterback or been in the market that could say, I can match a dollar sign. It wasn't about that. So that's one thing that I do like, the element of all this, specifically in college football, that you still have some of those kids that are going somewhere because they have the intention to win or because they want to be a part of a coaching staff or a program, and it's not about the dollar signs. The dollar signs have literally just got everybody all out of whack.
Yeah, I mean, I've followed a kid from when he was in 8th grade. He was the top defensive tackle in the country. It was down to Georgia and Texas to the last day, and he wore a black with red inner coat to his signing. He was going to Georgia. Texas called with $8 million. He committed to Texas. Like, what's the point? Like, to me as a fan, I've known about this kid since he was an 8th grader. He was in Georgia. He was set to be a dog. He had been there a million times.
That was his team.
He was asked why he went to Texas. He goes, it was the money.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be a dog today if it wasn't for the money. So, like, again, old heads like us, we miss the old school college football, but we have to live in the reality of this is the new age. This is what we're dealing with. And can your team be successful, and can your team compete with dollar signs?
Well, just think about this. Look at Ohio State won a national championship last year. 3 of their key players were all transfers. Will Howard came from Kansas State, Caleb Downs from Alabama, and Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss. Without those 3 guys, I don't think Ohio State wins a national championship. Those 3 were key. That's the reality of college football 2024, 2025, and going forward. And, there was a lot of people out there, they couldn't believe that Manning stayed at Texas, played behind Quinn Ewers for a couple years. Well, obviously the Mannings are doing real well financially, so it's not like he needed the money, but that's a rarity. what he did. That's a rarity.
Yeah,
He's there to be a part of that brand, I feel like.
I think it's the brand. I also think he believes in the coach. I think he believes in Stark. I think he believes in being developed by Stark. I think when they made that decision, when it came down, because in my opinion, it came down to Georgia and Texas between the two. And I think that him and his family genuinely believe that Steve Sarkisian was going to be the guy that got him to where he wanted to go, and that's the NFL. Because, again, the Mannings don't need money. Does he get NIL money? Sure. Is he
probably more than anyone?
Yeah. Is he getting a lot? Because is he drawing in stuff? Absolutely. But the end game for them is he wants to play in the NFL. He wants to be like his uncles and his grandfather and do all of those things. And good on him. I respected the fact that he stayed. He sat his turn. He even had like a glimpse of like, ooh, I may get some time, and then he went back to the bench. And so I'm all for it. I'm glad that there are still guys like him out there that are willing to sit and wait their turn. Because there's a lot of greats in college football that had to sit and wait and turned out to be studs.
I bet Tennessee fans wishes Nico Iamaleava is more like Arch Manning.
Yeah, for sure.
That he was willing to stick it out, and maybe Iamaleava didn't believe that Tennessee was developing him like he wanted. But that's not what we're hearing. We're hearing it's all about the finances. But maybe he wasn't sold on the coaching he was getting. I don't know.
That worked out real well for him.
But here's the thing: who's to say that Iamaleava will not develop into a great quarterback at UCLA? We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know. I don't know who the quarterback coach is there. I know Deshaun Foster's the head coach, and he knows what it's like to play in the NFL. We'll just have to wait and see. But all we heard from our end was nothing but the financial decision. It was a financial decision. But we don't know the behind-the-scenes stuff, and we probably never will.
Yeah, and really, to me, he tried to play that game that other guys in the Tennessee program did, that like, hey, like, I'm going to enter the portal. You better give me more money. Like, because I remember seeing tweets from him and pictures on Instagram from him. People were sending me stuff of him kind of flirting with the idea of entering the portal before all those windows opened up the first time. But then he decided to go through spring. The ultimate thing that was the X, that was like the no-go. And honestly, not a Tennessee fan, I gave a round of applause for Josh Heupel to say, this ain't happening in our program. Like, you can get your stuff and go.
And this was the day before the spring game.
Because he was sitting out. Like, sorry, you don't show up to practice the day before our spring game. Like, get your stuff and get out. And
he called his bluff.
That's the hard decision. Coaches don't normally make that anymore. And so, like, a coach with their starting quarterback, knowing that they have a tough schedule coming up, like, to make that decision to say, nope, I believe in my team more than I believe in you, like, get out. Like, if you're not bought into our vision, get out. I was standing in my chair giving him a round of applause, because that's a very hard decision in today's football age.
Everyone's applauding, but I'm going to tell you, here's the thing, the bottom line. If Tennessee starts losing games against the people that they don't feel like they should be, then people will be saying, I told you we should have paid Iamaleava. The fan base will turn. They will turn on Josh Heupel.
I know there will be some, but like, I've talked to enough Tennessee fans that also have said, like, in their mind, if they do good this year, like, that's great. If not, well, our starting quarterback left. Josh Heupel made the hard decision. The Tennessee fans I've talked to. Now,
I think that most of them are on board.
You get into the season, though, and you start losing games.
And the emotion takes over.
I get where you're coming
from.
And
especially if the quarterback is the one that costs you the game. He throws a key interception. Then people will be going, daggone it, we should have paid.
And that's the thing.
Throw out the text line. Text us your opinion on this. If you're a Tennessee fan and you're listening, like, did Josh Heupel make the right call? Are you going to stick with him through a rough season like this? Text us and let us know your opinion.
Volunteer Ridipest phone line, 423-749-1013. Once again, 423-749-1013. Text us your opinions on Coach Heupel and the way he handled the quarterback. I guess it's really the Nico issue. It was an issue. It was a Nico issue. And I feel like we talked about it a lot on the show. I feel like he handled it great. And I think for the most part, Tennessee fans are on board with what went down, because it's cancerous to keep a guy like that around your program. It really is. And to try to find a dollar sign and get on the same page, and the guy misses practice, showing that, hey, I'm special, the rest of these guys on the team aren't, I can do what I want. It was just a storm. I think he could not have handled it any better.
we'll ask Adam Rittenberg, who's going to be a guest on the show here in a couple, but maybe about 10 minutes. We'll ask him his opinion about the Nico Iamaleava situation, because I know he's got an opinion. So I'm sure he's got an educated opinion. He doesn't have a dog in the hunt, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and real quick before we go to break, some breaking news out of Knoxville. Philip Former's grandson, J.P. Peace, class of 2027. He's a linebacker from Knox West High School, 6'3", 215 pounds. He's announced that he's committed to the Tennessee Volunteers. So pretty cool.
That's a loyalty thing right there. Okay, he grew up all around. Do you remember when Philip Fulmer used to, hold his daughter's hands? That's the daughter. His daughter, that's his grandson. Isn't that crazy? Just remembering when Philip Fulmer would go across the field after game, he'd be holding his daughter's hands, and she's the mom of this commit. That goes to show you just how old we're getting, guys.
That's crazy.
Because, I remember when she was just a young thing, and then now here she is. Her son, 17-year-old son, is committed to the University of Tennessee, which I think is great.
Yeah, really cool. Love those stories where family, couple generations later, again, throwing my Notre Dame sense in here, Rick Meyer's son, being on staff and
crazy?
Yeah, it's cool. Me and Joe Montana's son coming to Notre Dame. I loved it. I thought it was neat, even though the guys might not always be what their grandfathers or their dads were. It's cool to see guys like that come back around. Hey, you're listening to The Drive on ESPN Cleveland. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got a guest, Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com. Also, we're going to talk some Atlanta Braves baseball a little bit later on. I know a lot of you are frustrated that we could not complete the sweep against the Rockies over the weekend. We'll talk all about that when we come back.
The Drive will be back after a quick timeout. Stay tuned for more nonstop sports talk on The Drive, presented by Hardees.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's the Trade-In Man.
This is John Davis at Kia Cleveland announcing our summer blockbuster blowout. You don't need to be a hero to pay zero. Zero down. Zero payments this summer. Plus, I need your trade, and I need it today, and I'm willing to overpay. Don't let the credit villains keep you from driving your dream car. At Kia Cleveland, getting approved is a possible mission. Our lenders will say yes to you and yes to your situation. Remember, I'll beat any deal from anywhere in Georgia, Tennessee, or Alabama. Come see me, John Davis, your hero in the car business, at Kia Cleveland on South Lee Highway in beautiful Cleveland, Tennessee, where getting the best deal is as easy as 1, 2, 3.
Looking for the dealer who's gonna give you more. Kia of Cleveland Superstore.
Example 25K4LX. 0 down, $349 per month for 72 months at 4.9% APR. Negative trade equity may be refinanced, subject to lender approval. Offers don't combine. Expires month end.
KiaofCleveland.com.
Hardees is hiring. Join the Star Team. Flexible scheduling, daily pay, free meals, 20% family discount, plus paid vacation for part-time and full-time employees. Apply in-store or online at Hardees.com today.
Hip or knee pain holding you back? There's a new reason to feel hopeful. Dr. Andrew Carlone is now part of the team at Center for Sports Medicine and Orthopedics in Cleveland. He brings advanced training in total hip and knee replacement, including minimally invasive techniques that get you back on your feet faster. Let Cleveland's orthopedic experts help you live your best life. Call 423-624-2696 or go to sportmed.com to book your visit now.
Davenport Fireworks has lost their mind. Everything is half price at Davenport Fireworks. Everything half price. Davenport Fireworks, Dalton Pike at the state line. Cleveland Tire Center's 49th anniversary blowout with great specials every day, Monday through Saturday. A $200 gift card drawing every Saturday through July 3rd. Cleveland Tire Center, where the name said it all for 49 years.
Do your legs feel heavy, tired, or achy? Dr. James Gooden at Milligan Vein offers an office treatment that can make you look and feel better, and your procedure is covered by most insurance. Visit milliganvein.com or call Dr. Gooden today at 423-961-5682.
Welcome back to The Drive, presented by Hardees. Join the conversation. Text 423-749-1013. You can also listen anywhere on our website, ESPNCleveland1013.com.
You're listening to ESPN Cleveland. I hope everyone out there is having a good Monday afternoon. Hey, when it comes to Mayfield Dairy Ice Cream, you'll never have a boring bite. The limited edition ice creams, cherry chocolate chip and banana pudding, are inspired by traditional Southern recipes and seasonal favorites. Pick some up today at your local grocery store. And I know the Braves didn't exactly get the sweep that I know that you were hoping for, but they did win 2 out of 3. And, man, the pitching really deserved better. They really did.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Looking back at the Colorado series in Game 1 last Friday, 12 runs the Braves put up. Offense just looked like we know what their potential is, and pitching was good. De Los Santos came in a tough spot in the game out of the pen. Bullpen looked good through the first 2 games. Game 2, it was more the same, really, where Braves won 4-1. You get enough offensively, but pitching was solid. It does look like Dylan Lee is your closer now, and I'm a fan of that. We've talked about that a lot on this show. He's a guy that really has solidified that position because he's not had many faults all year. Every appearance he's had coming out of the pen, be it the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning now, Dylan Lee has been great. Very excited about that, and excited about the fact that Raciel Iglesias looks like, for the most part, he's coming around a little bit. There's still some questions. Yeah. There's still some shakiness. Spencer Strider finally gets his first win in Game 2 of the series against the Rockies. That was a big deal. Starting to see that velocity up around 97, 98 again. When Spencer Strider's back to 99 and 100, he's back. He's Spencer Strider that a lot of people felt like could have won a Cy Young Award a year or 2 ago. So all that being said, then you go to Game 3 where you get a phenomenal outing by Grant Holmes.
Yeah.
Grant Holmes gets 15 strikeouts. He was one strikeout away from tying Spencer Strider's single-game franchise record of 16 strikeouts in a game. He was 1 away, and you get no offensive output. It's so frustrating because you said this on the show last week. Braves really need to get a sweep here against this team. Colorado, listen, their record's 14-57. Going into that game, it was 13 wins.
Question: have we played them already this season?
Yeah, we played them earlier up in Colorado, so we're not going to see them again.
Are we 2 of their 14 wins?
Yes.
I mean, that's tough, boys.
Yes.
Yeah, in that series up there in Colorado, lost Game 3, couldn't complete the sweep.
Yeah.
I remember a year ago, it felt like the Braves were getting sweeps left and right, and here we are, especially when we really needed it just for morale more than anything. Would have been nice to support a guy who you get a phenomenal start from, but in all fairness, Colorado pitched good yesterday, and unfortunately you had to run into a guy for them that was on his A game. And looking here at the box score, that was Bird, and they even said his breaking stuff looked better than it's looked all year. So we're seeing situationally how it is, we get his best start of the season. So it's just kind of seems like more of the same for the Braves, where we want to make excuse. Well, that was his best start all year, but it doesn't matter. You've got to step up and have some offensive output to support a guy that had a no-hitter going into the 5th, or maybe it was a 6th. Yeah. But Grant Holmes was phenomenal.
And like you said, Jacob, I mean, winning 2 out of 3 against the Rockies, that feels like a failure.
Yeah, it really does. Like I sat there, and like when that popped up on my phone, because I was traveling, I was still coming home and getting settled and all that stuff. Like I just couldn't believe it. And you expect a sweep, especially at home. I don't know.
It was Austin Gumber, by the way, not Bird. Bird's the one who came in and got the win. But Austin Gumber, it was his best start of the year for the Rockies, undoubtedly. And probably not being in Colorado had something to do with that. Everyone said that's why they can't sign pitchers up there, because no one wants to go to Colorado in that elevation to pitch.
True.
But you get his best start, and offensively for the Braves, that would have been huge to get that sweep, especially leading you into this upcoming series with the Mets. Mm-hmm. Braves are off tonight, playing the Mets starting tomorrow, and we've got it lined up to where Chris Sale's going to pitch twice against the Mets in the next 2 series. That's why they kind of shifted things a little bit, because Chris Sale, you talk about a guy who's doing his job right now. Chris Sale looks like he's ready to win another Cy Young Award. But you can't rely on one start every series of Chris Sale to pull the weight of a team trying to make the playoffs. It's unrealistic. So hopefully we continue to get the Strider that we just saw. Hopefully in game 1, Spencer Schwellenbach, who's 5-4 with a 3.11 ERA, he's coming around and looking pretty good.
Didn't he pitch a complete game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So hopefully
I was sitting by the pool when when that popped
He's
up.
throwing that in our face.
He is.
Every time
he
he's
is.
getting an opportunity.
But so I do feel like the pitching is there, and you shouldn't just have to rely on Chris Sale. It's the bullpen that scares me. We said this all year. The bullpen scares me. Got to add a piece. The most common thing I've seen on social media when it comes to the Atlanta Braves is, why are we not getting bullpen help? Why? Someone help us. Someone call AA. See if he can make a move. We need some bullpen help. And maybe we're waiting to see if we're still in the mix of this thing or can get more so back in the mix before we make a move like that. I don't know. There was some rumors. Did you guys hear about the Rafael Devers trade that just went down?
Yeah, for the Giants. Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's big for them.
Boston Red Sox apparently called the Atlanta Braves asking about Sean Murphy as part of that deal. And do I think we need Rafael Devers on this team right now as far as the clubhouse goes, or did we before they traded him to San Francisco? No, I don't. But I don't know. I feel like there's something missing in that bullpen, and it needs to be addressed. And the fact that we haven't at least a little bit is concerning. And that goes back to the front office. I'm not putting it on AA. He knows what he's allowed to budget within, and he knows what pieces he wants to deal. And I think, and I hope this isn't the case, but I feel like maybe front office says, hey, whatever happens this year happens. We'll regroup, reset, and be ready to go next year. I hope that's not the case. I hope this team gets back in the mix, and they give him the flexibility to go after somebody.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch the Braves as the trade deadline gets closer and closer. That's for sure.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We'll have more Atlanta Braves coverage tomorrow right here on The Drive. With that, when we come back, got a big interview with Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com right here on The Drive, ESPN Cleveland 101.3.
The Drive will be back after a quick timeout. Stay tuned for more nonstop sports talk on The Drive, presented by Hardees.
Davenport Fireworks has lost their mind. Everything is half price at Davenport Fireworks. Everything half price. Davenport Fireworks, Dalton Pike at the state line.
For a quarter of a century, Mix 1041 has been taking you out to the ball game.
Swanson to first. The Braves are world champions.
Since 2000, Mix 1041 has been the home of the Atlanta Braves, and we're celebrating by giving away tickets to Atlanta Braves games all summer long. Listen for your chance to call or text to qualify. You can also register at the Mix socials on Facebook and Instagram. Braves 25 is presented by Cleveland Ford. Honest people, honest deals.
We tend not to think about right now, but right now in front of us is victory over cancer. Right now, cancer research funded by the V Foundation is leading to better treatments and saving lives. When you give to the V Foundation, 100% of your donation goes directly to game-changing cancer research. Victory over cancer is there for the taking. By you. Donate at V.org, because today's cancer research is tomorrow's victory.
Don't give up. Don't ever give up. Hey guys, this is Dan Good from Crown. Just reminding you that Crown Ram is Cleveland and Bradley County's Ram headquarters.
Not all composite decking is the same. Enjoy life's beautiful moments on an equally beautiful composite deck. Envision's products feature deep, non-repeating grains and distinct colors throughout each pour, offering a truly unique appearance unlike anything else on the market. Learn more and find inspiration for your project at Cleveland Plywood. Cleveland Plywood Company, 2700 20th Street Northeast in Cleveland.
At First Horizon, we know if there's a win, there's a way. Our team is here to help every step of the way with personal, business, or private banking. Stop by and visit us at one of our locations in Cleveland or give us a call at 423-559-7660. At First Horizon, we look forward to finding a way.
Welcome back to The Drive, presented by Hardees. Join the conversation. Text 423-749-1013. You can also listen anywhere on our website, ESPNCleveland1013.com.
Welcome back to The Drive here on ESPN in Cleveland. Hope everyone out there is having a good Monday. And happy to have joining us this afternoon, Adam Rittenberg from ESPN. Adam, thanks for coming on with us, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. Hope you're doing well.
Doing great, man. Hey, I love to always start people with a controversial situation, too. When will we know about the punishment that the NCAA is going to hand down at the University of Michigan with the Connor Stallion sign stealing violations? And what do you think the punishment could end up being?
Yeah, so most of these cases take about 12 weeks from the Committee on Infractions hearing until there's a decision. So that would put us, sometime in early September. But, this is a complicated case and, kind of a unique case because it's the integrity of the game. There's obviously been some penalties that were imposed by the Big Ten. There's been a bit of self-imposed things, at least proposed from the Michigan side. So I'd imagine we'll have an answer, by the end of September. And, anything could range from additional recruiting restrictions or, more suspensions all the way up to, a postseason ban. I wouldn't say that that's, likely or definite like some Ohio State fans are hoping for. But I think a lot of things are on the table just because it's a widespread case. And I think they have to determine how much of this was, Connor Stallions acting alone, or was this a lot of people in the Michigan organization, having awareness of what was happening and not doing anything to stop it.
Adam, in the segment before we got you on, we got into the Nico Iamaleava situation at the University of Tennessee. So what was your opinion about what happened at Tennessee with Nico?
Well, I think it's certainly magnified because it's Nico and it's Tennessee, but these things are more common than you think, where there's essentially a contract dispute and the player wants more money, and the school says no, this is what we're giving you, and this is what happens when you have such a landscape where there aren't set in stone contracts and collective bargaining and things like this. So it's certainly a shock when it happened. The fact that he went through pretty much all of spring practice before deciding to leave the program and head out to UCLA eventually. And we'll see if it works out, right? They'll see if it works out for him at UCLA. Probably won't work out financially the way that he wanted it to, but maybe his performance out there will lift up that program. And then we'll see if Tennessee, again, which made the playoff last year, can avoid a drop-off after having its quarterback situation really blown up here at the end of the spring.
Adam, thanks again for joining us, man. One of the big topics around football recently has been the House versus the NCAA settlement, and I'm just going to be honest with you. I struggle to understand what that looks like going forward in college football. If you could give me personally and then our listeners just kind of like a dummies version of what all that means, going forward.
Right. Yeah, I think if you're a fan of a power conference team, it's going to be interesting just in the sense of how will the school, which now will be paying the players directly, how much of that money, $20.5 million or so, will be devoted to football every year? How much of it will be devoted to basketball and some of the other sports that matter, especially at schools in the SEC that really compete at a high level in so many sports? But I think it's going to be the big difference is that schools are now going to be distributing revenue directly from their budgets rather than from these third-party collectives, even though there's going to be an NIL component. And the idea is to have that NIL component more controlled, where every deal over $600 will have to be approved by a third party. So that obviously could open them up to lawsuits and all sorts of things. But I think that the key here will be just how departments are managing this line item that they didn't have to deal with. I mean, they used to take their revenue and invest it in coaches and in facilities and things like staffing. Now their media revenue, a good chunk of it is going to go back to the players.
Talking with Adam Rittenberg from ESPN. And Adam, Ryan Day hinted that the Big Ten deserves 4 automatic bids in an expanded 16-team playoff.
Others are leaning towards the 5-11 model. What are you hearing right now about all this? The expansion of what kind of a model do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, no, it seems like there's more support for the 5-11, but the Big Ten and Ryan, I was the one who spoke to him for that. I think he was echoing what the Big Ten's position has been for quite some time. As the largest conference, as a conference that spans coast to coast and added teams that had made the college football playoff in Oregon and Washington, they believe that they should have a guaranteed portion of spots beyond just their champion every year. So I think ultimately, if they can have a little bit more uniformity in scheduling, if the Big Ten can get that from the SEC and say, hey, you have to play 9 conference games just like we do, or you have to play 10 Power 5 opponents, everyone has to agree to that. Maybe they'll budge off the four at least having 4 playoff spots. But this is Ryan was just the one who had a microphone in front of his face. But this has been the Big Ten's position now for a little while to have at least 4 guaranteed spots.
Once again, we're joined by Adam Rittenberg of ESPN.com. Adam, Andy here, and my question to you is: there's been some rumblings about the potential of there being home playoff games for the first 2 rounds of the college football playoff. Is that something that you could see becoming a reality?
Well, certainly anything's on the table. I think the one thing that is a concern for folks is how long the playoff will go, right, or is going right now, having the bowls be the second round as opposed to having 2 home playoff sites and then having the bowls essentially serve more as a semifinal, and then you have a championship a game, obviously similar to how it was in the 14 playoff, where the season would wrap up closer to January 10th, January 8th, as opposed to going well into January. You're competing against the NFL playoff. You're competing against a academic calendar that really isn't in your favor. So I understand the desire to end the season earlier, and there certainly are proposals and discussions about when to start the season, when to play the playoffs games, and where to play them. And certainly having covered the Notre Dame-Indiana game and seeing college football playoff product on the campus site, it's great. And I think those are the places that we all fell in love with college football, not necessarily bowl games. Now the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl, Orange Bowl, they have great traditions, but I don't know many people who really got into college football because of a bowl game. They got into college football because they went to a campus and they experienced tailgating and they experienced the tradition and the fans and the different stadiums. Like, that's what draws us to college football. So I think anything that looks at playing more of those games on campus is a good thing.
Absolutely. Now, this time last year, Adam, Billy Napier at Florida, he was on the hottest of hot seats. Obviously, he was able to get things turned around late, and he seems to be doing a pretty good job there in Gainesville. Now, I'm going to throw 4 names out at you, and you tell me, who do you think has the most pressure to win in 2025? You got Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, Lincoln Riley, USC, Brent Venables at Oklahoma, and Brian Kelly at LSU. Which of those 4 do you think has the hottest, if you want to call it, maybe the warmest seat?
Yeah, it's interesting. In terms of hot seat, I don't know if any of them are in imminent danger. And I would say that with the qualifier that Brent Venables needs to do something positive. I mean, Brent Venables, when they hired him after Lincoln Riley left, there was a lot of excitement because he had so many ties to Oklahoma and he wasn't going to leave and big time them for another program. But, the bottom line is Lincoln Riley did a lot better at Oklahoma than Brent Venables is doing so far. So I know they've supported him and helped him with resources and staffing and so forth. But, another, poor season, certainly a below 500 season, they would have a decision to make. USC's an interesting spot, similar to LSU, where they paid so much money to their coaches. It's going to be hard for them to get out of those contracts without that coach maybe wanting to leave as well. So if things don't go well at USC, for instance, this fall, maybe there's a landing spot for Lincoln Riley instead of an outright firing. Similar with Brian Kelly, he's going into a year where they have a much better roster. They should be in the mix for the playoff, and he's entering his 4th year at LSU. The last 3 LSU coaches had won national titles by the end of their 4th year. So there's certainly pressure there, but I don't see it as necessarily a hot seat situation.
Adam, one thing that we talked about before you came on was the transfer portal and kids, hopping in and hopping out. I know one thing that Kirby Smart chose to comment at SEC Media Days and make a point was hoping that the transfer portal went down to just one instead of multiple opportunities. Do you see a world where college football moves back to there just being one opportunity for them to enter the transfer portal?
Yeah, I think that if at all possible, it is something that a lot of coaches will rally around. And while the spring did yield some big names like Nico Iamaleava and others, it's so disruptive to try to build a team when your roster is in flux, well into May. So whether it's getting rid of spring ball and having one later transfer window, or having a single transfer window around. Ideally January after the season is over, could end up being beneficial for the sport, because it's just so chaotic right now with the roster so much in flux, really from the end of November all the way through May. I mean, you just don't know what you're going to have, and that's not really a sustainable way to run a sport.
Adam, I saw this morning that Texas State is possibly leaning towards going toward the Pac-12. Of course, you got Fresno State, San Diego State, Boise State, Colorado State, and Utah State already committed. And if they go, that would give them 8 members. Now, that got me to thinking, we haven't heard much conference expansion talk here lately. And I know the ACC seems to be on semi-solid ground right now, but I guess as the time gets closer to the end, you may see some schools moving. What do you think is the next big move in conference alignment?
I think it's going to be something more along the lines of, is there that true breakaway that we heard about? And are the schools that generate the most money and have the most eyeballs on them going, at least in football, going to split off and play as a conglomerate of whatever, 35 or 40? We may be further away from that, but I don't sense a huge desire from the SEC or Big Ten to expand immediately. But there certainly is interest in schools like North Carolina. I think that would be a school that both the Big Ten and the SEC would covet. I think Florida State and Clemson, if they were attractive enough, they would already be in the SEC or the Big Ten, or there would have been a stronger push in order to add them. That could still happen, but I think that the ACC is still a league that I think others are looking at and evaluating. And then some of these other smaller moves might happen, whether it's Memphis going to the Pac-12 or kind of assessing what it ends up doing next. But I think the big one is going to be, do you have a full split of maybe the top 35 or 40 schools that end up just playing football in a separate kind of super league?
Wow. All right, last question for you, Adam, before we let you go. What are in your opinion, the top 5 programs, not the best teams, but what are the top 5 programs at the FBS level right now?
Yeah, I think you have to look at, certainly who's competed for and won national championships, who recruits at a high level, who does really well in the portal, stability with their coaching staff. I think, right now, to me, the 3 programs that are maybe a little bit above the others are Georgia, Ohio State, and Texas, just the way that they're operating. And then you certainly look at Oregon and Penn State and Alabama, LSU are in that conversation. Clemson, we forget that Clemson won 2 national titles in the past decade and has a team that has a chance to compete for one. I think this year that won the ACC. I think that they're a team that you would put into that conversation. But at the very, very top, I think it's really those 3 that in terms of their coaching, their resources, their staffing, their ability to add top transfers. I think Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, whatever order you want to have them, are a cut above.
Where would you put Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think Notre Dame has made progress, right? I mean, Notre Dame has become more competitive in the recruiting space, and they're adding a higher caliber player. I think for Notre Dame, they need to take a step at quarterback. And, even though Riley Leonard did a really nice job for them last year, I don't think anyone was confusing him with, an elite level quarterback. And I think that's still where Notre Dame has a room to grow. And maybe, CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie or someone else comes along in the next few years and becomes that type of guy. But I think Notre Dame has money. They've shown that. with the types of transfers that they've added. Marcus Freeman is really aggressive. I mean, think about it. Marcus comes from Ohio State. He comes from a program where they can pretty much pick and choose whichever recruit they want to add in the country, certainly in the Midwest. He wants to do a similar thing at Notre Dame. They've been a little bit more limited as to who they can add, but I think that pool is expanding, and you look at their recruiting, they're certainly not far off. They're very, very close to that elite group as well.
Adam, we sure appreciate you coming on the air with us today, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Adam Rittberg from ESPN.
Always appreciate him, and had some pretty interesting insight. Had to throw the Notre Dame.
I'm glad you did. I was kind of waiting.
I think he overlooked them, honestly. I would consider Notre Dame right on the cusp of a top 5, maybe in the top 5.
Well, I agree with what he said about the quarterback position. Whoever you go with this year at Notre Dame is going to be a guy that's going to be your quarterback for 2 or 3 years. So it's a guy that's going to be able to settle into the position and be your quarterback of the future. The one thing I would have said is, who's the best running back in the country right now? The answer is Jeremiah Love, who plays for Notre Dame. So that guy's a pretty big player. And when you talk about a premier position at running back, one thing outside of Notre Dame, which I appreciate you throwing that in there, Jim. Thank you, by the way.
Well, it's, I believe they are.
But he mentioned Memphis, which I know not a huge Memphis following here on the east side of Tennessee, but the potential of them being in the Pac-12, first of all, it would be a huge step for them. But realistically speaking, could we not just get them and Cal to meet in a room and say, hey, Cal, you go back to the Pac-12. Memphis, you go to the ACC.
Well,
would that not make more sense?
I think Cal and Stanford, and I believe this is going to happen. I think once the Pac-12 gets going again, and I think as the ACC media rights become less and less and less, I think you'll see Cal and Stanford go back to the Pac-12. It may be another 5 or 6 years, but I think at some point,
I hope they do.
Logistically, I think it just makes too much sense for them to go back. But I don't think you'll see Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. I think those are going to stay in the Big Ten because of financially.
Well, I'm starting to believe more and more, and Adam kind of confirmed those suspicions that we are probably going to end up with a mega conference before this is all said and done.
Away from the NCAA?
Yeah, I do. I really do. The more it happens, the more money becomes the motivator. I think it's going to turn into a mini NFL. They're going to break
it's like the minor leagues.
They're going to break those 40 teams up into 4 divisions or subdivisions or whatever, and it's just going to be the Big Ten and the SEC basically coming together saying we're going to govern this body of football. I don't know what that looks like in the future. Me and you used to sit in a classroom and talk about what NIL was going to look like, and I would come up with things like a donor's going to buy 100 jerseys and then donate them and write them off on his taxes, and that money's going to go to the player and everybody wins. Never in my life would I have thought that this is what NIL was going to turn into.
Same here.
So, we can sit here and speculate what this major conference is going to look like, who the powers that be are going to. I don't know. I have no idea. I do know that, it's trending in that direction. I just don't know what it's going to look like.
You made the comment about the caller that called the Paul Feinbaum show about he's got a disconnect with the program now, and I don't think he's alone in that. And there is a disconnect, and I'm like you. I used to follow recruiting like you wouldn't believe, because usually when you got that recruit, they were staying. They were going to be there for 3 or 4 years.
It was a big deal.
Occasionally you'd see a transfer, but it was rare. It didn't happen that much. Now I'm like, heck, how's your recruiting in the portal doing?
Yeah,
that's just as important as your recruiting high school kids. It really is.
One thing that I thought was interesting that Adam mentioned was on your question, Jacob, about the opportunities to enter the portal. That's one thing that I do think would kind of tame the craziness, if you will, of the current state of the transfer portal. If you say, hey, this is your window, this is when you can transfer. If not, you're bought into where you're at. And I think it should be different, probably pertaining to each sport, each season. But as far as college football speaks, for that, at the end of the fall, at the end of the season, you have a window where the portal's open, where you've got enough time to kind of lose some of the emotion of the season that you just experienced, but at the same time, you can't stretch it out all summer going into spring practice to where you're making moves like Nico. I think there needs to be a window late January
for football.
Yes,
for
specifically for football. And you honestly, not even by season, you would probably have to do it by sport,
right?
Because
basketball's different.
Exactly.
Than football, yeah.
Exactly. So even within that season of a fall sport, other sports might have their championship prior to the college football national title game. You adjust the windows according to the sport. That way, the athletes, the teams, when it comes to recruiting, you know how hard it is to prepare for a playoff game whenever you're trying to recruit the portal too? Like, that's insane. That shouldn't happen.
Yeah, and, I think the hot topic has been NIL and money and all that stuff. I think if you ask coaches what they're most concerned about, I really do think they would say the portal, because you need to control what you can control. You can't control when guys are just entering and leaving, and you have to manage your roster.
Oh, it's so hard these days.
They have people that run their collectives. They have people that are in charge of recruiting,
they
and
got general managers.
Certain, like you said, certain teams have general managers that that's a part of their job. As a head coach, I need to worry about who my first, second, and third string linebackers are going to be. And if they're popping in and out of the portal every 10 minutes, I can't control a roster. So you give me a time that says, hey, from this point to this point, then you have to figure out your roster. I think it would make for more conduciveness, and I think it would make us fans as well say, okay, in January is when a couple guys from my team are going to leave, but once that's over, I've got my team from spring until the next January. And so, I can kind of buy into my team there if I know who's going to be coming into the fall. But, with Tennessee fans, you've got Nico leaving before the spring game.
It's a flawed system, no doubt about it right now. Hey, tonight at 8:30, right here on ESPN Cleveland 101.3, we've got Game 5 of the NBA Finals, Pacers, Thunder. The series is tied. This has turned into a series when a lot of people didn't think it was going to be much of a series at all.
Yeah, so I think the Thunder have the advantage being at home, but I could see this thing going 7 games. I really could.
Yeah, I think that would be good for this NBA Finals, as it seems that the viewership has started to gain some traction as it's went on, now that people realize it is going to be a competitive final. So excited to have that right here on ESPN Cleveland. Once again, Braves off tonight. Tomorrow, Braves Mets back in the A. First pitch 7:15 tomorrow. Spencer Schwellenbach on the mound against David Peterson. Hoping the Braves can get some much-needed wins within the division starting tomorrow night. Listen, glad to have Jacob back. Nice tan and all. Jim, glad to be back with you as well. You've been listening to The Drive right here on ESPN Cleveland. I'm Andy. Appreciate you guys joining each and every day, no matter what the platform, if it's the ESPN app, mixtv.tv, YouTube, or just on the radio. We're thankful for you guys. Have a great day.
It's time for a Don Ledford of Cleveland traffic update on ESPN Cleveland 101.3. Don Ledford Chevrolet Buick GMC, located on North Lee Highway in Cleveland. Or visit donledford.com for details. Don Ledford, where we say yes. It's on-time traffic with Commander Chuck.
Good afternoon. Still a bit of volume on 153 coming southbound here at Lee Highway. It's been tricky today. Again, just like last week, 75 north up by